your points about democracy are well made. However, you misunderstand our process if you think our process is a replacement for democracy. It's not. Our process is an academic review that aims to put in front of Nova Scotians the best available information for Nova Scotians to draw their own conclusions. We've set out a process that will allow that to happen, and we've been making very, very clear that let me finish, please. When our report goes to government, that is the point at which normal political processes, if they aren't already underway, have to play through. And we have made absolute provision for Nova Scotians, municipalities, Aboriginal communities to have their say, to exercise their democratic rights, talking to MLAs, talking to their councillors, talking to their band leaderships. So this is, we are not the government. We are a group of academics who are trying our very best to put in front of Nova Scotians the information that's out there and make that relevant to Nova Scotians. Well, we are not a priesthood. We are not a government. We are simply academics doing our best to render a public service.
This process would have benefited greatly from all of the stakeholders being involved and for some academic rigor in the process. I'm offended by your analytic deliberative approach that has as its underpinning, and I think this is a quote, it's theoretically possible to have functioning regulations in Nova Scotia, and it's theoretically possible to have enforcement in Nova Scotia. I'm offended by that, having lived through how both of those are vicious and outright lies in Nova Scotia, that we are disempowered as a community. You then proceed as though it were theoretically, even though it may be theoretically possible, to describe this approach that says, let's go ahead and we'll sort these things out as we go along. We'll answer the problems and answer the unknowns. We'll do a full cost accounting. We'll involve your communities, even though we haven't been able to demonstrate it in this process. Trust us is your message, and that's what analytic deliberative approach is about, and it's offensive because it's undemocratic, it's not scientific, it's unrigorous as an academic discipline, and risk assessment, as I've told you before, is like a tortured spy. It tells you exactly what you want to hear, and that's what you're proposing, and that's all that you're proposing. So don't give me the claptrap about academic rigor. You don't even have academics that can discuss what this means and how rigorous any of this is, because none of it is.
Let me deal with all of your question. The way we've handled information flow.
No, why didn't you answer my emails? That's the question.
That's what I'm about to answer. The way we've handled information flows is that all of the emails come to a single point. And I'm sure, Mr. May, you understand that if I was to answer personally every email, or if I was to meet with everyone who requests a meeting, I'd be working 120-hour weeks and unable to do my main job, which is running Cape Breton University. So what we've done is ensure that the information that comes in, whether they're submissions from the public or questions, legitimate questions such as yours, they go to the right place, they get answered in the right way. I absolutely understand this is frustrating, but in the same way that I've refused to meet industry lobbyists.
You've included industry lobbyists on your panel.
That's not true.
Mr. Ray Ritzie?
That's not true.
Dr. Brad Hayes?
Dr. Maurice Dussault? Are you telling me these are not industry players?
I'm saying that if you allege that these are industry,
I'm not alleging. You look at your website and how you've described them. They are industry insiders. Maurice Dussault holds a patent for a fracking process. When did he tell you that he held this patent?
I was aware of that several months ago, but I think
several months ago. So after you appointed, at what point did he tell you?
You have to be careful what you say. So you're in a public.
They're industry players.
Let's let that pass. Let me explain who these people are.
Let's not let that pass. That's a really key point.
Well,
You've included 3 people who have vested interest in the development of a shale gas industry in Nova Scotia on your panel.
So let me explain.
You did that intentionally and knowingly, right?
Let me explain our process for appointing.
There's no point. I know your process. Your process is to create a panel that becomes a filter on what the public has to say. You have not.
You've done this province a tremendous disservice
You produce discussion papers that are substandard on numerous levels. And as I say, you've got 3 people in the industry on your panel. You have, with the exception of Mr. Christmas here, who's there as a specific Aboriginal representative, you've included no contrary voices on your panel. You put out a report on a draft discussion paper on socioeconomics that doesn't have a single number in it. The only numbers that you produced that's on the other slides that you didn't get to show tonight, but they're on your website and we can see them. The numbers you've created, you come up with an imaginary number for how much we could get in royalties. But you haven't come up with any imaginary numbers on a regulatory system or on any other issue. You would know that talking about a regulatory framework in a province that proudly hosts Boat Harbor and the Sydney Tar Ponds, you would know that there is no faith in the regulation. You would know that not a single time in the last 40 years has the Nova Scotia government ever stepped in to stop industry based on environmental concerns.
But what I will say on the question of panelist ethics is that I think it's very unfortunate when people throw around accusations, they throw around insults, because I don't think that helps the public discourse. What I'm seeing, though, is a confusion of what this process is versus what the democratic process needs to be. So I'm more than happy to answer, why Maurice Dussault, who's an engineer who invents things all the time, might have a patent that he believes might reduce environmental impacts.
He does have a patent. You've got to know that for a fact.
Yeah, let me speak, please.
You know that for a fact, don't you? He holds the patent.
So let me explain how things work with engineers in academia.
We don't want to know.
Engineers in academia.
Explain how you deal with that conflict of interest.
The conflict is, if it exists, is declared.
Yes, it does exist.
You said he told you a couple of months ago.
How can it be declared?
He didn't declare it when you appointed him, did he?
So Maurice Dussault is the national expert on well integrity. He was appointed to the Council of Canadian Academies for that very reason. He is someone who has a
You're funded by the federal government.
Lots of people are funded by the federal government, the provincial government, NSERC and others. So please, academics work on problem solving. We have industry experts who know, because they're involved, they consult with the industry. And that is the kind of expertise that I believe Nova Scotians deserve to have mobilised on their behalf. And it can be weighed with all the other forms of expertise from the public and elsewhere.
We still have to protect our Mother Earth, and we're all equal in humanity. So we all live in Mother Earth and we have to protect it. And I don't care the academics part or the geologists. Mother Earth is already speaking to us. The global warming is already happening. There's hundreds of disasters every day. And basically we have to be true to one another of Mother Earth. And that's all I have to say.
So you are on file, on record, on the CBC, saying there are going to be 2,500 jobs. So to me, that means there's going to be 2,500 wells. Do we want Nova Scotia to look with 2,500 wells on it?
So, do you want me to...
No, I'm not finished yet, because that's the thing that is, and you know what it's done with this jobs thing, is that it has, pretty sight, eh? Do you know where you want to put one of those? Do you know where they wanted to put one of those?
I am happy to answer the general question about
600 meters from the shore of the largest freshwater lake in Nova Scotia. Now you tell me that is socially responsible. The potential of oil and gas resources. Potential compared to what? What are you comparing potential oil and gas resources compared to what? Potential economic impacts compared to what? Not doing it, or doing it, or compared to doing renewables or another thing? But my main question is, where are you getting 2,500 jobs from?
Sure.
And what are they based on?
Okay. And there are formulae for, how
In other
many
words,
jobs.
it's an economic model and has no bearing in reality
So
whatsoever.
well, so anyway, there is
entirely made up by your expert makeup.
Okay,
artist.
thank you. So the experience is there for us to extrapolate to what this might mean under different scenarios if it ever happened in Nova Scotia. So that's where the 2,500 comes from, and it envisages. I'm not saying this is something I support or anything
Yes,
I'm
you are.
predicting.
But by using that
What?
2,500, this is what is causing the biggest concern with everybody in this building and all these meetings that we've been going to, is you're just putting out these made up. I don't know why.
Just
Is
one question.
this how you teach your students
so
in
let me-
CBU? Is this how you just say,
listen.
okay, look, we
Listen.
just have this model?
Well, so let me answer the question, because you put it very powerfully, and I think it deserves a response. So what we've done is we've used industry experts who have an impeccable track record
You
working with
industry
listen, let me answer the
has no
question,
bearing
please.
in reality.
Can you? I have a high respect for Nova Scotians. I believe that Nova Scotians are capable of looking at data, positive and negative, and working out what that means for themselves. It's not for me to say what Nova Scotians should think or feel about particular bits of information. But the reassurance I would seek to give you, sir, is that regardless of whether or not you believe any of the data we brought together, regardless of whether or not you believe that it's not worth doing anyway for philosophical reasons, we have built in checks and balances in our recommendations that would ensure that any community would be able to require much more specific information, economically, including jobs, socially and environmentally, before they gave permission to proceed.